And some people think that, oh, I either own most of the company and I can't be a COO or I can't be a CIO or a CTO for this company. It's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
just your share ownership doesn't define that you have to be the top at the chain. And if anything, there may become a day where I say, I'm not the best CEO to grow this company. You can
Right.
hire a CEO to do this job. Like, any job can be fulfilled. You got to find out where you provide the most value in growth.
Hey guys, Damian Stevens, host of MSP Mindset. Today I got the pleasure of speaking with Greg Browning at SinglePoint Global. Not only has he won Inc. 5000 6 times, not only is he number 24 on CRN's list of fastest growing MSPs, but today we talk about how he went from 2 million to 11 million with most of those years without a salesperson. And then the following year added 13 million in revenue. If any of this is interesting, you're not going to want to miss out on our conversation today. I have in the notes that you grew the company from 2.2 million in 2014 to 10.9 million in 2018.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah. No, that's how, essentially, yeah, I'd have to go back to the 2014 ones, but yeah, essentially by 2019, we were a $10.2 million company. And then by the end of that year of 2019, we ended up being a $23 million company.
Wow.
So yeah, we started off the year at 10.2 and ended by 23. But it was obviously a skyrocket to our revenue, right? We had one big contract, and that's obviously dangerous, right? Because one big contract being 50% of your revenue, that's the things that they're like, whoa, you were never supposed to do that. That is scary. But it was, we had the team to deliver it, and it was mainly a big hardware refresh for a customer, replacing all their routers and switches, and infrastructure, building out data center, and really deploying a lot of core equipment across 12 locations. It took some time. Like, that was a 5-year contract. We had to go to different sites at different times. But it was great. EBITDA was great that year. Profits were great. We were all jazzed up by all the stuff that we were going to do over the next 4 years. And then the reality hits, right? Like, all of a sudden you go from 10 to 23, and then you're like, okay, next year is a whole new number, right? You can only replace so much equipment each year, but it's going to start going down.
Yeah.
And so you have to have a good sales team to now push it right back up, right? So each year, our sales team was able to do a really good job at bringing in new contracts. So we brought in new customers, new clients every year. So even though our one-time revenue was falling with this client, as the more we were completing the projects, reoccurring revenue was going up over the years.
That's awesome.
So we went from literally over a lifespan of 4 years where one client was 50% of our revenue, and it was one-time revenue, which isn't really good revenue, right? It was just replacement of infrastructure. But between the managed services with that client as well as new clients that we were bringing in, we were able to maintain that kind of $23 million top line revenue over the years. So to where now in 2024, we're back to 90% reoccurring revenue and only 10% one-time revenue. And that client's down to around 5 or 6% of total revenue versus 50 4 years ago. So the dynamics of all that and correction and making sure that we were coming out at the end of in a healthy looking MSP when it comes to the SLI index and things that you're supposed to follow. We ended up coming out okay, and pushing through and continuing to find more ways to actually get some more one-time revenue back, right? Like 90-10 is a good number, but SLI says it should be 80-20. So 20% one-time revenue and 80% reoccurring revenue. And typically if you're finding underneath 20%, it's because you're not engaging enough of your existing clients to fix projects and things that they have. So while hopefully that's not true in our team, we believe we are talking to our clients and doing those things, but That's currently where we stand.
Now, I want to unpack a couple of things because I love the reality of this, right? As an owner myself, as a former MSP, I know you're not supposed to take on a client that's half or maybe more than half your revenue. But if you can deliver and deliver well, I defy anybody to say no. Like
Right.
you're supposed to and doing are very different. And the other thing is, sure, Paul Dipple's amazing and an SLI is amazing. And there's nothing I can say negative. But, you know, would you rather have recurring? Absolutely. But, it's also if the margin's there, I don't know that's a bad,
Right.
revenue. Right?
Yep.
You still are growing revenue, adding value, proving yourself to ultimately sounds like a pretty substantial opportunity. And so the other reason I say that is at least I do, I won't speak for you, Greg, but I get so caught up in sometimes these benchmarks. I got to be 80/20 in my managed versus my project, or I gotta be all, got to get all the recurring revenue and no very little project or one-off revenue or things like that. And obviously we want to understand where we are and where we want to go. But I think there's sometimes we miss the opportunities that are in front of us because it doesn't fit into our little box. What's your take on that?
Well, I think so there is some risks like with that. Obviously, not just the financial risks and the image risks and things like that. But it's also I think SLI helps at least keep people on a line of a trajectory. It doesn't mean you have to follow it every time. To your point, right? But it does. Some of the things that would have been great to know back then, and would have been really good to know if COVID was just going to be a thing, is to figure out how to reinvest properly. So when we got that money, I could have just taken it back, and all the board members got a nice dividend and a great payday, right? But we were on a scale and growing pretty substantially for the couple years prior to that as an MSP, that we were like, okay, we're going to reinvest majority of it. Like majority of those profits went back into the business. And over the years, it was building out new divisions, hiring new managers, improving new product lines. And this kind of goes into that risk of when you get these large clients, and it's very important on how you use that revenue, because if you reinvest too much, there are substantial risks if it goes away, right? There are things you have to consider, and I did not consider back then, as that revenue starts to fall off, or you don't get those renewals on some of these large contracts. I mean, it's impactful to the business if you reinvest too much in. And we were back then on that rocket ride of like, yeah, we're gonna keep going, and then COVID hit, and I mean, it's a lot of the reinvestment and things that we were doing. We were now figuring out, okay, I got like $100,000 a month of inventory of circuits I have to reflip because companies just went out of business.
Yeah.
And the way we were selling, that we were growing as fast as we can't sell that way no more. Nobody was answering the phones. So it put definitely a bender into where we thought we would be right now and where we ended up. So it's I think, just to circle back to that, it's definitely important on how you reinvest those profits and to not go too crazy. Bonus the team, take a dividend, do some things that you don't use back into the business, because if you do too much and you run into a thing like we did with COVID, it was a risk. Like we started losing profitability because as we were not selling where we were going to, but we were hiring to that, it changed a lot of things in the business. And it's taken almost a couple years to adjust that and continue to save as many people as I could to continue to ensure that we were set up for growth. And when we started catching back up and COVID was gone and we were getting those contracts back in. So I'd say it's good. Definitely, you don't have to follow SLI, but in the end, it's also very important that you don't go crazy with some of these larger contracts, that you reinvest too much into the business, because while it has its own risks. And you never know when churn's going to hit you, especially with all the PE stuff that's happening. And I mean, you could be doing great for a client for many years, and all of a sudden, new ownership, new leadership. Now it's like it didn't matter how good you were. This new person has their own team or their own MSP, or just wants to change things completely different because they don't know you from a hole in the wall, and they can swap you out just like that. So everybody, it's not, can't feel like you're an invincible MSP that'll have the contract forever anymore, because in reality, with how efficient we've gotten on, everybody is improving and adding on and bringing on new clients. We can remove other MSPs within 60 days. And it doesn't mean you can't do it to anybody else. So it's definitely important to ensure that you have a healthy bottom line, not just a healthy top line.
Sounds like that was a hard one lesson there. And the reason I wanted to highlight that is, of course, it's amazing that you've made it to the top 500 and the fastest 150 and all these accolades, and I think it's 6-time Inc. 5000. And those are amazing. But part of what I want to kind of tell here is, while that's amazing, there's risk with some of the growth, right? And I think everybody goes, man, if I were where you are, I'd have everything made. and if you ever get there, it's not always maybe as easy as it sounds. Hey guys, today's episode is sponsored by Servosity. I created Servosity because I was an MSP that lost data. Then I had to go in front of my client and tell them I can't recover. If you've ever been there or worried that you would be there, then you may want to take a look at Servosity. We do 2 things that nobody else is crazy enough to do. We test your backups maniacally. We do that daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly for you. Then we manage the backups for you so you can focus on growing your MSP instead of babysitting backups. If you're interested in our unlimited storage or immutable storage or any of the things that I'm talking about, visit servosity.com. I want to talk about, from what I could tell, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of came up as a technical guy, like the typical MSP. So you were a server engineer and you were this and that and other roles before you were running SinglePoint. Is that right?
Yeah, it was definitely just like most MSPs where you're starting up, you're doing a lot of the work, right? Like doing almost everything in every division. So I definitely grew up tech, didn't go to college or any of those things, literally just started working right out of high school. And working straight for IT companies.
Here's the thing I want to try to unpack and understand. How does somebody with a technical bend, which is usually great at technical and hiring and managing engineers, and usually, great with the clients, but not usually great on the sales side, how in the world did you manage this crazy growth rate from 2.2 in 2014 to 10.9 in 2018? And I think you didn't hire until 2016, somebody in sales. So for a lot of those years and a lot of that growth, you were literally it for sales. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it was me trying to work out how to build a sales team, because as you grow, eventually you got to keep, think of the small business mentality, right? First it's you doing everything, and then eventually you're starting getting pieces off of you to gain that tree, if you will. And where I needed to continue to focus for better growth was sales. So I was doing well at selling. I was able to have a lot of connections, talking with clients. Over the history of doing tech for many years, I had a lot of connections. I wasn't nervous going into a room and talking to people and doing a lot of those networking events. And that's still one of our best sales strategies today, is going to every conference and networking event that our customers would be going to.
Oh, wow.
And some of these award shows, like some of the award shows that we've been going to that aren't MSP specific, are networking opportunities for other companies that are growing and need your services. So it worked, but then eventually it was like, okay, we want to continue to grow faster, right? And this is where we needed to have the right people in the right seats, if you will, and I needed to get a CRO or sales strategy person in line that can grow that. Like I wasn't a Salesforce person. I never wanted to go into it.
Hmm.
I was doing paper contracts for literally the first 10 years of this business, if not longer. Um, and
That's
just
funny.
scanning them in because I was like, when it come to connect twice sell, didn't even know what that existed.
Sure.
Salesforce was like not something I did not any passion of going into.
Oh yeah.
I looked at other CRMs and I was just, no, I'm just going back to the paper signature and meeting with clients, shaking hands and scanning it afterwards. But that doesn't scale, right? You need to get a sales team. You need to be able to get more people to sell. And so I went through a couple different sales people for a year or two trying to figure it out. And then I hired a guy I went to high school with named Robert Lanier, and he's been one of my best hires for that organization ever. He's been growing the sales side continuously and meeting all kinds of challenges, the COVID challenges, the growth challenges, changing our whole marketing strategy from selling circuits to then selling MSP work, because we were selling a lot of circuits as almost like a Trojan horse to get into a company because they were small and transactional. And
Hmm.
then going to no, well, that's can't, nobody wants circuits anymore after COVID. Like it's not a thing. They're all
Yeah.
leaving the office, not needing new circuits for offices. So we had to go in with something else. And so we learned to sell like almost every other MSP of selling help desk first and cybersecurity and those things. So he dramatically changed the ability for us to sell. We were hitting large quotas with a small team. Only like 3 to 4 people at any given time with $3 to $3.5 million quotas each year and
Wow.
annual contract values. So they were just killing it. And didn't have a churn problem. We were continuing to renew clients and grow. So
Let me. That's a lot. Let me unpack some of that.
sure.
I want to go back a little bit because I struggled with this, and I think a lot of us do. When did you realize you were that bottleneck? Because there's a lot of that founder-led selling, and of course, if you're like me and like a lot of others, you hire somebody and you throw them a lead list, or you tell them to go to the Chamber of Commerce, or you do this or that, and then you haven't adequately prepared them, and then they don't work. And if you're like some MSPs I've worked with, you've hired half a dozen salespeople that didn't work, and then you end up with this like, I'm the only one that can do this. So when did you? Let me just start with that first part. Like, when did you realize that was what you needed to do?
I mean, I think I was still figuring it out. As I said, I went through a couple people prior to him and learning what I liked and didn't like and what
Mm-hmm.
could do, and obviously results. It's really to manage a sales manager. It's easy, right? Like it's quota, and what are you doing? How are you doing to that quota?
Yeah.
So it's not as hard to run a sales manager as it is for a sales manager to run their team.
Yeah.
And I think because my hire had history of running sales teams prior in his previous work, he already had that capability of managing to the team and knowing what numbers needed to produce and how to go through salespeople and get the right ones. So a lot of that I think I just got lucky with, right? Because
I love that when you get lucky.
yeah, it didn't take too many people to find the right one. And when he came in, he was able to make the right hires underneath of his team and continue to just turn in revenue, to create contracts. And
So
once
did you?
I didn't put a lot of boundaries around that. Like I was just like, look, you do you, man. I'm not gonna you sell the way you sell, and we'll be just fine.
Was your expectation when he came in that he would be the closer and carry a quota, and that then later grow a team and like I'm going to try with one and then
Yeah,
ROI,
no,
right?
I
Or
mean,
did you
even
say
though
you
he
come in
ran
and build out a
sales,
team?
yeah, even though he ran sales, he had to carry the bag too. Like
Okay.
almost every MSP when they hire somebody,
Yeah.
even if they're in a senior, unless you've gotten money and can grow out a team quickly, everybody's carrying the bag. Like
Mhm.
everybody's doing sales, leads are coming from referrals, and everybody in the organization, friends of their friends, like it's coming from everywhere, right? And it's everybody's hands on deck. And we're still to that day. Like even though he's running a sales team, he'll still work deals and meet people and run with orders just because we are a little busy right now. And when it comes up, no matter I think I look into a lot of my leadership that it doesn't matter what position you are. Every now and then we're all going to have to jump back in some way and help each other out in order to get in, but pull back out, right? Like find ways to get us back out. But I think it's important, especially with growth and growth plans, that sometimes unexpected sales happen, and everybody needs to jump in and make sure we push through but have a strategy to get back out.
So how long did he go before building a team? Was his first thing to build out a team? Was it to start closing some deals?
I have to recall back. I believe it was just him for a while. And then as he started spinning up more sales, he then got to hire a couple more people.
Since you've been through this, besides getting lucky, I don't know how to replicate that part, Greg, with a high school friend, but since you've been through this, and so many of us, including me, have struggled through this, I know I've talked to so many MSPs. They have completely unrealistic expectations, right? I don't know how many I've talked to that they throw them an outdated lead list and a non-existent or outdated CRM and tell them to go to the chamber, or it used to be, open up the phone book and call. I'm dating myself using those words. But, there's modern tooling now, but like, I'm not saying you can't use lead lists, right? There's validity there, but they're set up, it seems like for failure day one. And it seems like a lot of them also have kind of unrealistic. They don't understand ACV and maybe a realistic quota. And the reality is they're in investment. The other mismatch I see is like, I want them cash flow positive by month 1 or 2. And I'm like, that's just not going to happen. Right. So what would you say for somebody that's, doing founder-led sales, wondering about that, trying to make that transition? What should they, based on what you've gone through, even if they get lucky, using your words, what should they expect?
Yeah, so I had a MSP hit me up on LinkedIn, I think it was less than a month ago, and he was reaching out. It's like, look, I've seen you've been successful. I have some questions. Can you help me out? And I'm like, sure. So I had a call with him, and part of that got into the sales part. He's like, look, I'm running my own MSP, trying to figure out how to grow sales, and what can I do? And a lot of this is what I've told him was coming just through the same strategy and success that Robert's been able to present here. And a lot of it is there's emphasis. And again, my strategy or what worked for us may not work for everyone. So I'm not saying this is the key to win. Sure. I definitely think it's based on people, execution, right partners, and all those things. But a lot of people get sucked up in the digital marketing strategy. Oh, you got to send 1,000 emails, and you got to update LinkedIn every day, and you got to do this and got to do that. And that may work for your market. It may not. Like you may be able to spend $5,000 a month in Google and get a good return. You may not. Like, I think it's important to understand that no market is going to have the smoking gun, right? Like you can't use every strategy. There's lots of methodologies, and you just gotta maybe sometimes fail until you don't, right? Like you have that, I'm going to try digital marketing. Well, we tried it for 6 or 7 months. That didn't work. Especially in Northern Virginia area, there are lots of people who own that marketplace in Google for MSP or a help desk or any of those things. So we couldn't go that route. We tried emailing and digital marketing, and that wasn't working. Didn't like a lot of the content, found it was a lot to manage, but that could work. I mean, it really depends on the market. And where we found is working was actually what we were doing before COVID, but it didn't start working until recently. It was just going back and using the phones again. We had an internal BDR who was really good at getting people on the phone, getting people interested. And it's easier when they work for you, right? Because they show up to the desk every day. You can work with them. You can hop on sales calls and find what they're doing wrong. You're more engaged than an outsourced BDR company, right?
Absolutely.
But with an outsourced BDR company, there are more opportunities. They're a little more affordable. But how you engage with them also matters. If you're just hiring them and then not working with them, going through their calls, listening to what they're doing right or wrong, engaging with them, circling back on the leads that they brought and saying why they're good or what they're not good with, circling to what is a good lead and what is not. Like, You got to hold to them accountable to what you say is a lead. Like if
Yeah.
you don't work with dentists aren't a lead. It just
Yeah.
like you can reject the lead. That's not a good lead for you. Like you should say no. That's not yours. Or if you're not good with finance, if you realize that a finance company is probably too high risk for you, don't accept it. And then they have to go get another one. So I think some of those things is making sure that when you partner up with like an outsourced BDR, even an internal one, is identifying what a lead is to you. And a lot of that comes to, okay, what is your target customer profile? We've all heard TCP before, and identifying what that is. And once you have that, the leads that you're getting should be applying to that. And if you just continue to accept leads that don't apply to that from outsourced BDR companies, you're not doing yourself a favor. You're just hoping that somebody that you're not good at selling to will buy from you. And results like that won't work.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. Anybody that's tried to manage the sales team knows it's not easy. There's a real skill there. And BDR as well, right? They can absolutely work. And you would think in this day and age, when I say you, not you, but like anybody listening, that like making calls sounds very old school, but it still works, especially the less of the others that are doing it when everybody's email inbox is full or, they're not searching on Google because, they don't know that they have this issue or this problem or this opportunity exists. So I love that you're kind of zigging when others zag or, taking a different perspective. And it's not that it's unheard of, but I think there's a lot of people that would lead you to believe, there's a lot of headlines like cold calling is dead or, just things like that don't work anymore. And, you get a lot of clicks for all the reasons you'd expect.
Yeah, and again, I think it's really market driven. I think it really depends on what market you're in, what's going to work, and having the right partner in that market to do that. And if you think just giving a company money and not helping them grow and to close deals and what they're doing right or doing wrong, and that you can just let it go and leads are just going to come in, you're never going to be successful with an outsourced BDR. Same with an insourced one. If you're not working with that person every day on what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong and how to grow, your leads aren't going to come in. It's not, hey, I can now go focus on this because this is taken care of now. It takes massaging, it takes work, it takes figuring out what's working and what's not and pushing that forward. So it's to your point, is like, yeah, your leads aren't going to come in month 1 or month 2. Hopefully they start coming in by month 3. And then you've got a 60 to 90 day close cycle of those. Like of just those opportunities that you were able to just now talk to and say they wanted a quote. And a lot of those will still be under contract. And then you got to wait until that happens. So then you got to follow them and keep up with them. It's a whole cycle. And it's not just, yep, I'm going to pay this company and their leads are going to come in and then I'm good. I can do the rest.
I feel like somebody listening heard what they needed to hear right there, right? You can't, you're not going to get a ROI in 2 or 3 months on a new sales hire, for example.
Right.
The only reason I say that is I've had a lot of MSPs that just like, why aren't they crushing it by month 3? It takes time. I want to switch gears for a moment and talk about team and culture. You grew a tremendous, there's very few folks that would still be the CEO, I think, going from 2 to 23 plus million. And, but I want to talk about how the other thing is we've talked about this, before we started, around how you care so much about building the right team. And I know enough to know that when you grow that amount, you've got to have the right people or the whole foundation would crumble. So tell me how you managed to do that and what are some of the lessons you learned?
Yeah, I was probably a little late to the whole process of getting pulled out, even at the size that we were. I have to hand it to my current COO, John Kang, and the team under him they were successfully able to kick me out of IT.
Nice.
They made sure I had no more access to the infrastructure, the network, the decisions, all of those things. And so they did a really good job at growing and taking on all the stuff that I used to do. And even some of the unique things that they had no idea with. Like I had a big carrier background running the telecom network, and they took on all that along with building out the MSP stuff. So they continue to grow with that, and now we're reshaping a lot of the stuff that we used to use or used to do, and trying to set ourselves up for success in the future, right? Like, because through the 20 plus years we've been running this company, you don't use all the same tools, you don't use the same processes, you're continually updating what you're doing and how you're doing it. And as we brought in more leadership, because we identified we needed either change or different skills within these roles, which the idea was to eventually start getting them toward the different departments that we have within SPG kind of run themselves and shape what they need to do and hold them accountable to their delivery of that position to then allow us to grow. We're still working some of that out too. I mean, we're changing some of our processes, we're changing some of our tools, and I think that's going to be the way it is for MSPs forever. You have to be able to figure out how to change internally without affecting the customer. You may be ConnectWise one year and Kaseya the next, right? You may be Halo or whatever. Like, you can change tools, but then it changes processes, and you always have to give yourself time to do that properly in order to continue what good looks like for you as you grow. So we're finding we're reanalyzing a lot of our infrastructure today on what we did in the past 20 years and what we want to change, and then how we want to continue to market that going forward. And now that we have a full management team in place to really analyze and take ownership of all those tools, it's then, okay, making sure that they're all comfortable with what they're using instead of just inheriting what I chose all those years, right? It's like, hey, you got to do this. Now it's like, let them figure out what they want to do and what they want to manage, especially if it makes or does the same thing that it happened before. Now I'm out of it. I don't have to deal with it. It's their job. They chose a new tool or wanted to take on this tool, and it's their role. It's their job now. And so the more and more you look into your environment as an owner and trying to get pulled up, the more you have to trust in your team that's below you to take on all those responsibilities. And just because what you chose may not be what they want to choose. And as long as sales can continue to sell it, you should be fine. You should be okay with that. You should actually encourage that.
Right. So I know that you talked about that you're kind of in a new role. As I know you've been CEO forever, but tell me a little bit about that. You kind of, because it's a place that I think not many people get to, and I think even less have the humility to talk about it. So share that with everybody if you would.
Yeah. Obviously, like as you're the guy who's kind of running as integrator, as EOS likes to use it, where you're kind of in the weeds and everything and getting pushed more up. Ultimately, you have to be the visionary, right? You have to get out of those day-to-day roles. You have to start thinking about what's next in the business and what new product or new process or thing is going to drive revenue. And if you're still in the weeds running and trying to make all those other decisions that I've been able to hire them to run those roles, you won't be able to grow. And so over the last couple of years, again, as they've taken everything away, I've been starting to understand my new role, right? Is I can't be the guy who's worried about this ticket or this PSA not functioning the way it is, or that integration not working properly, or why sales is having an issue with this. Like, I need to rely on my team to handle those issues, because if I start getting pulled back down, you can't then be thinking about what's going to grow the company next. And that was a transition for me. I mean, when you're doing all the things and then trying to now say, okay, you're not even have the capability to do the things anymore because you don't even have an admin account to do it. It's a change, right? It's like,
it's a big change, especially, right. What is it? 17 years, 18, something like that, that since you founded this company?
It was a side business back in like 2004, 2005, where I bought a company for its debt and had 3 customers, and I still have those customers today.
That's amazing.
But I didn't take it full time until around 2010.
Okay. So 20 end and maybe less as a full time. But even since 2010, I mean, that's, doing math there. If I can add or subtract, it's 14 years. And I think you're saying it's really the last maybe 2 you've been kind of adjusting to this new CEO role.
Yeah.
So that's a lot when you've done something. And I know you adjusted and pushed yourself up, but it's still a lot when you're, at least from my perspective, in the weeds. You know all the things. You start to, I know as I've grown into this kind of role, you knew the customers, you knew the names, and now all of a sudden maybe you don't know all of them, and you don't know their issues, their network, their whatever it is. Like you kind of knew that. It was in your, at least from my perspective, maybe in your head. And
Yeah,
now,
still trying to get used to that one too. I used to be able to, I literally would make my job to know every client and shake my hand. And I still try to do that today. It's just harder.
yeah,
And when you're getting around 200 plus, it's tough
yeah, yeah.
to make time and to know and have those relationships. And that's, I think, again, part of the process that we're establishing is making sure that there is somebody there, which now is the VCIOs, that are becoming that kind of owner-led sales process where they're so engaged in what good looks like for their network. I don't have to do that, right? It's their job to know what the future looks like for that client's network and to design that in that way the client trusts them, that they're providing them real data of what change that they need. And if they don't have that trust, they're not going to buy or do those things. So it's I really see the VCIO becoming that kind of owner connection or main point of contact connection in this day and age, like almost more than the TAM was, because it's more driven of like, hey, let's talk about your future, what you're doing, and how we need to adjust for that. And that's what the owner did all the time. That's what I did for all those years is, hey, who's the head contact? Let's talk about your network. You need to make these changes. They trusted me and then they bought. Well, you can't do that anymore. You need to rely on the team to do that. So that's where, as I'm getting pulled out and not doing those things anymore, it's now, okay, building processes to make sure there's people that still do that and continue to push that. So it's been a change. Like it's the more and more I felt like things were being taken away of what I was, but then it's really opening up to things I need to be for the business. And I think that's where they've been able to push me, whether fighting and kicking, but I'm getting there of really working on what's next.
Yeah. So I'm curious, on the personal side, how does it feel? Because at least I'll speak in my perspective a lot of times I've got mastery at this and pretty good at this. And then all of a sudden I've got to give it up. And most of the time it's to something that I'm not good at or that I've maybe never done. So I keep, I feel like sometimes CEO is, once you start to get good at something, you have to give it away. So tell me about your, journey on that.
Well, it was
path.
tough. Again, I loved being in the middle of everything, but I definitely still loved bringing in new products. I mean, we are a little unique in the MSP space because of all of our different product lines. Like we do data center, we do circuits, we don't resell a VoIP solution. We have a VoIP solution internally. Like we started all these different product lines. So I actually do like those things. I just didn't have any time of figuring out now once we spread it to a certain size and had so many different products to continue to grow them. And so even though I loved the operation part, I did love bringing in some new ideas and new things of what we can do next. And not everybody is going to want to do that. Like they maybe, and that's okay. Like maybe instead of being the CEO, you come president, right? Or the COO. And let somebody else kind of figure out that new future and next product line and how to lead that company if you're not good at that. I feel like I'm still going to be really good at that. I'm still trying to work it out. I don't have everything down to a T. I have lots of coaches and people that I talk to help me grow that. Nothing that they've told me that I need to do is scary or foreign to me. So I'm just like, okay, that's just expanding on and trying to build upon more of what I was doing lightly as a full-time now versus trying to do it lightly and do everything else. So again, like I said, that kicking and screaming earlier, I used to love going in and being the problem solver, right? Like clients, I loved making, yep, you solved our issue, you took out our outage, whatever it was. And so that was tough for me to let go. But now it's like, okay, I can still do that in a way with new product lines or new ways I can change the customer's business by figuring out what the company needs to invest in or figure out next. So we can bring that still to the client just as a company and not me solving the problem. So it's really just kind of pushing on that concept.
Any advice you have for those of us that are owners that are listening to make sure we give away the right things? Because I think sometimes I don't know until I've given them away. Sometimes like, it's, you have to scale, which means you have to give more and more away because you started doing everything. And I think at a certain point, like I think it's not hard when you go from being 1 or 2 engineers to 3 or 4. I don't mean technically, but you hand off a little more responsibility there, or L1 tickets are not that interesting anymore, or whatever. But then there comes a point where you're giving away things that maybe you do enjoy. So I know sometimes I haven't realized till I've given them away, and sometimes I realize it was the right thing, and other times I feel like maybe I'm giving away the things that I am either enjoy and or the best at. So I'm curious if you've thought through that part of it.
Yeah, and I think that's where operating systems come into play. Like they help you identify things that you're supposed to let go of, and where your role is, and if you can start identifying if you really like that role or you shouldn't have that role. But that helps you decide what you need to give away, whether you like it or not. And they kind of give you a framework of how to grow, right? Like it's like, okay, if you're going to be this role, you can't be doing these things anymore. Like them or not, this is just a proven concept over and over. EOS, scaling up, all of these things are ways that kind of help you understand what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, and what you have to give away as you grow the business. So I think those help, and to really put out, and to be honest, even like running through SOC 2 and building out job descriptions for every department and every role. If you don't fit that job description, you shouldn't be doing it, right? Like you shouldn't, and if you can't fulfill the department description, you shouldn't be there. Yeah. And that some of that stuff comes through that maturity of following an operating system or going through SOC 2, really identifying roles, departmental roles, responsibilities, and then looking at the staff and yourself of, can you do that? And is that your place anymore? And that will help you go through that of what you should be giving away and what you shouldn't. And again, it's like you said earlier, it's also pain points. Like some stuff, the stuff that you should be giving away first is stuff you don't like, because you're probably not good at it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And that's when it came to the sales stuff. I was like, I knew I was good at it, but I wasn't good to scale. I didn't know how to run a sales team. I had no idea where to bring this thing up when we have and still have these dreams to scale rapidly and grow, but smartly. And I knew I needed somebody else to fulfill that role. And but then I needed to replace the things I did like. Like again, I liked the customer service side and the tech side of solving problems. But again, that's not where my role is. So operating systems help define what you should and shouldn't keep.
Because even if you're good at sales, you realize the next level wasn't the role you needed. And I love the fact that you love solving problems or customer service, but you still got to give it up because you have a framework, right? The operating systems. So you understand if you're not going to give it up, like you said, maybe you need to be the COO. And otherwise you're going to hit this ceiling and hold back everybody.
And some people think that, I either own most of the company and I can't be a COO or I can't be a CIO or CTO for this company. It's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just your share ownership doesn't define that you have to be the top at the chain. And if anything, there may become a day where I say, I'm not the best CEO to grow this company. You can hire a CEO to do this job. Like any job can be fulfilled. You got to find out where you provide the most value in growth. So it doesn't mean just because you're the owner, you have to be the CEO. If you're a better operator, go back to COO. Have somebody else fulfill the role. It's just, some people get messed up in that concept of like, well, I'm the owner, I need to be the top. No, you don't.
That's right. No, there's some that are far better integrators than COOs, you know, and I'm better on the visionary side. But you got to have that right person, or the whole thing will come unraveled. And if you're great,
you may be the best salesperson or know how to run a sales team. Great, you can still be CRO or CSO for a sales team and hire a CEO to do the CEO things. And maybe they're better public speakers, maybe they're better networkers and partnership developers than you are. Great, hire a CEO. You don't have to be the top.
I want to switch gears for a minute and take advantage of all your experience over these years and all this growth. What's one of the biggest lessons you feel like you've learned or that you would share?
I mean, like I said, I didn't even join a peer group until the last 3 or 4 years. Like I feel like I was way late to that. And I used to think in the first 10 years of this business, I was like, why would I go to a group of competitors and talk about what's working for me? And it's like, it was that thinking that really held me back, to be honest. We probably would have been a lot more further in advance than we are today if I had joined a peer group. Like, it's been one of the most enlightening things for me as an MSP owner was to join a peer group. And the things that we talk about aren't just, hey, what's working in your markets, but it's also what is next for the MSP and helping me with my visionary goals of finding out new ways and new products to sell and how to differentiate ourselves. Because in the end, we all do support. I mean, and you don't want the customer to think that that's all you do, or you will be then price shopping. You're now just a catalog and, oh, you're the cheapest price? Okay, well, you all do support, so I don't even care. And I'm going to get some normal complaints here and there. I don't even care if one's better than the other. You're just cheapest. Yeah. And so we don't want to get into that realm. We don't want to be dropping to the just who's the cheapest, and we are going to lose in that atmosphere. So peer groups help you get above that. They're telling you what to think about next, how to grow, how to connect more with your clients, why it's important, and why learning from their mistakes. And I could say I wish I did that way earlier than I did, and I probably would have had a lot more success by doing it, by learning from all these other smart individuals who were in businesses much longer than us, and getting their data of their wins and losses. So I'd say still that's the best. That and definitely getting a good bank. Having a good bank on your side and getting a line of credit and using it, especially when you're first starting off, is so important.
If there was one thing you could do differently or do over, what would that be?
That's besides just the peer group. I don't know if there's much more I'd have done different. I think we've been pretty lucky with that. I think it just with the teams and the products that we've brought. If I'd have known COVID was coming, I'd have changed some things. But but no, I don't think there's too much I had to change in what we've done, because it's also helped us grow to where we are now. It's been great knowing more of what I knew back then and could have learned. That's why I still rely on the peer group. But other than that, I'd say a lot of the stuff that we've gotten through and where we're at today are because of what we went through.
I've noticed that you seem to be not only open, but you just have what I would consider an unusual degree of humility, where you talk about, I need to do this, I need to learn this. And I think that personally, I would bet on you, because I think that's going to take you places that it won't take others. Is that always how you've been? Was that through some hard fought losses?
No, I definitely kind of one of those people that like tell you the truth all the time, whether it hurts me or not. It's actually won us some deals because of it. I've had CIOs reach out to me and say, no, I could tell you were the only honest one on this, out of all these RFPs, and we want that. And I think it's being honest and humble is definitely a way to grow. It's definitely, again, I think why I still have those first 3 clients today, because they've seen what we've done, where we're going, and how we're always there and telling them the truth, what's good or bad, in order to fix it and taking accountability for those issues. So even when we had some, whether it's our fault, their fault, it's just getting to the point of what the problem is and just fixing it and making sure it doesn't happen again. And I think that it's like a lot of people think MSPs are just like retroactive, like looking in the past, firemen, and if your clients start thinking of you that way, you're doing something wrong. Like you can't think that way. You can't let them think that way. You have to look into the future, and I think that's what's going to continue to grow relationships and being honest with them, and that's just in my nature.
Speaking of MSPs, what's a common myth about MSPs that you feel like you'd like to debunk?
I mean, I'd say MSPs, maybe they think they're all alike, and that's definitely not true. I think when customers kind of understand that there are some built for mid-market, there are some built for small business, not everybody does a bundle, not everybody does the same thing, then they'll realize that where the true value starts shining, right? I'd say one of the things we do well is our vendor management, because we can take 10, 20 locations, both for circuits, VoIP, data center, anything, and put it on one bill. That's a differentiator for us, right? Not a lot of MSPs can't say they do that,
Yeah.
and but it's literally not everybody fits that. Now, are we best to sell into some of the SMBs? No, we're going to be a little more expensive because of all those different solutions. So I think when customers start understanding that MSPs are different and what you're looking for needs to be value driven and not price driven, they're going to win and have stronger lasting relationships with their MSP than they will by just thinking we're all the same and that's just price shopping.
I love that. I think almost every MSP needs to hear that, because sometimes it just feels like it's a race to the bottom, and that's because you're saying you do the exact same thing.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the sales calls and sales consultants and everything, and saying you cannot just go to price. I mean, you will shoot yourself in the foot every time. You
Yeah.
have to figure out what your value is and push that and preach it, and that is what's going to get you the higher margins.
I want to switch gears and talk about the future. What is it that you're looking forward to?
Really, this new layer of growth that we're going to be pushing for. So we have a couple initiatives in this year, and we're looking at our house, if you will. We're redefining some of our product lines and making sure, both from onboarding, delivery, sales, outcomes, customer success, invoicing, all of that, we're doing a real deep dive on ourselves, because we want to be able to make room for more of these ideas that I'm coming up for the future. So we felt like it was important to step back sometimes and just kind of make sure you got your house in order with everything that you do and how you're delivering it, because you can't be thinking about new stuff if you're still working on stuff you're trying to deliver today. So we really want to just make sure we're all on the same page in those different aspects of the business on every product line we deliver today, before we then start introducing some more new ones that we feel will be game changers in the future. Both with AI and automation and how we can incorporate that into our portal and provide more integration into customers' businesses beyond just the tools that we deliver today. So we wanted to take a real deep dive in 2024 at what we're doing. Is there anything we need to change? The products, the descriptions, the marketing, all of that stuff, to ensure it's very value focused, and then be able to introduce new ideas and new features that we have coming up. And with some of our CMMC solutions, with some of the automation stuff that we want to go, like there's a lot we want to do, but I felt it was important to use this year as a check yourself year and ensure we're ready to do that.
Yeah, I think I needed to hear that. I don't know about somebody else, because sometimes I get excited about the opportunity to improve the way we deliver this, the way we do this, this opportunity for growth, whatever that is, whether it's the automation lever or the AI lever or the compliance lever or whatever it is. I get excited, but sometimes just going through your house and making sure you're ready could be the best thing you ever do.
Yeah, we feel it helps sync everybody up, some of the new people and management, all to agree that this is how we're delivering everything that we do today. And that way we're all at the same page. We're all agree this is the direction on each of these lines. And then that allows us to then open it up to new stuff. Because with the new management that I've hired over the last 3 years, and now that we have a good tree structure, CRO, COO, directors, senior directors, managers, like a lot of these people are new, and they need to understand why we're doing this, and they may have new ideas of why we shouldn't be doing that, and how we're doing this isn't efficient, isn't according to our core values. Like, we need to get better at what we're doing today before we can start looking at ways to fix the future. So we're really diving into that and making sure everything that we're doing is pushing to our core values, pushing to our mission statement, and really driving out the outcomes that we want and that the customer needs in order to see our value. So that's our year. Like, it's really just a reboot into looking at what we have.
What's a book that you would recommend anybody that's listening?
I'd say one of the most recent ones that helped me was The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Right? It's yeah. It's definitely a good book. It has some laws and some things that you need to follow. and tells you like the absence of trust, the fear of conflict, the lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, inattention to results. Those are all the bad things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all of those things. And then he talks about the good things, the opposite of those, like absence of trust. No, you need to trust one another. Fear of conflict. No, you need to engage in healthy conflict. Like it's all of those things are really how to drive the more out of your team, because as soon as you guys can learn to do that in a meeting, you can then start having the outcomes that you want out of that meeting in order to make the changes in your environment that you want to change. And that's been important for us as we start looking into all these product lines, because we have to be honest, we have to know some things are broken, some things are great, and and not every idea is going to be the idea we go with. And so I thought that was a good book. I shared all the notes with my staff, encouraged them to read it too. So that was definitely one I would suggest. And to be honest, any of those books that Patrick's written, it's they're all going to be helpful, and definitely some nuggets you can steal from each one.
Yeah. 6 Types of Working Genius, and so many good ones there.
Yep.
Well, I would love to take your
6 Types of Working Genius. I read that one too. That was how everybody can. It helped put into perspective, and because my CEO and CRO read that. Or sorry, my CRO and COO read that. And we started identifying how we all think, and it made some sense on how some of the times that we get frustrated with each other because it's like, hey, this is the point. And then we have the wanderer who's just like, oh, what about this? And just going way beyond. And all of those are essential. So I did like that book too.
I appreciate that, because I think, in a similar way, I appreciate the language to recognize that, because those things were perhaps happening, but I didn't have the framework or the language to identify that it's all relevant, it's all needed, and it's okay. Because I think it's easy to say, stay on point or just do this, and be very terse or direct about it. But they're all needed in the right context, and it helped.
And for the right meeting. If you're trying to do a strategy meeting, a wanderer is the best place for them. Because you want them to go all over the place and think about all the different ways that you can do stuff. The last thing you want is the person just getting completion, because you don't want that meeting rushed. Right. It's like this task could go on for quite a few meetings to figure out what's next, not just, hey, you want to just go through boom, 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 boom and get it done and get it off your plate. That's not the way strategy meetings go. So if you got somebody that's the T, you don't want them in that meeting. But if you got an operational thing that you want to get done and you want to make sure it gets done to completion, T is exactly who you should be giving it to. So it was a cool book, and seeing how the assessment worked out for our management team and where we all shined.
I love that. Well, Greg, I feel like I could do this all afternoon, but I will be a good steward of your time. Thank you for being on MSP Mindset. Would you let everyone know if you're open to it, how they could find you, social media, website, whatever you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, I'm there. Again, I'm definitely open to talking to other MSPs. Talked to one literally within the last month on growth strategies and things that we were doing that were working or not working at the time. I'd say that'd be the best way is LinkedIn.
All right. Don't miss out on that opportunity. Take Greg up on that offer. I've gotten to talk, backstage and learn a lot of cool things from you. So thank you for that. And thank you for being on MSP Mindset.
Thanks, Timmy. Appreciate it.